didn't make sense to us either because the majority of the people that we personally knew and had relationships with was like gone. They were gone.
Let's be honest. If you were a preteen in the early 90s, you probably had a crush on at least one of these guys. They were young, cool, and had just enough swagger to make grown men jealous. But were they really another bad creation or another big catastrophe? These kids weren't exactly groomed for fame. They were just a bunch of neighborhood kids, literally the new kids on the block who had just moved in and had no friends. So what did they do? They turned the sidewalks into their own little concert stage, dancing for spare change just so they could buy candy from the corner store. One day, fate, or maybe just good timing, stepped in. They were doing their usual sidewalk show when they caught the attention of a woman at a local beauty shop. She wasn't just impressed, she was invested. So much so that she called up her brother Kevin Wales to come check them out. Cute kids. That was Kevin Wales' first thought when he saw them. Now, Kevin wasn't some big shot producer at the time. Nope. He was a 20-year-old Delta Airlines maintenance worker who just happened to be obsessed with the music industry. He dabbled in singing at local clubs, but deep down, he had bigger dreams. So when he saw these kids doing their thing, something clicked. Jackson 5, new edition. The world loves a group of talented, energetic kids. And these boys? They had the moves, the personality, the potential. Wales pulled aside two of them, 5-year-old Dave Shelton and 10-year-old Chris Sellers, and said something that would change their lives. Go get some of your friends. Let's start a group. And just like that, the squad came together. Just imagine it. This random group of neighborhood kids, probably still learning how to tie their shoelaces properly, now being shaped into the next big thing. And here's the wild part. Kevin actually believed they could make it, and he wasn't the only one. Because soon enough, Michael Bivens would take notice. It didn't take long for these kids to prove they were more than just a cute sidewalk act. Within 6 weeks, yes, 6, they were tearing up talent competitions all over Georgia, snatching trophies and turning heads. The world didn't know it yet, but another bad creation was coming. The final lineup, a mix of friends, cousins, and brothers, all with a knack for dancing, rapping, and looking way too cool for their age. David Lil Dave Shelton, the baby of the group, born November 11th, 1982, in Boston, Massachusetts. Romel Roro Chapman, born June 15th, 1978, in Atlanta, Georgia. Christopher Chris Sellers, Roro's cousin, born October 19th, 1978, in Cleveland, Ohio. Demetrius Red Pugh, born September 23rd, 1979 in Atlanta. Marlis Mark Pugh, Red's younger brother, born April 15th, 1982, and Adrian G.A., General Austin Witcher, born September 7th, 1978. With a solid crew assembled and talent to back it up, ABC was ready to take off. But there was one big problem. Yes, Kevin Wales had big plans, but first, he had to face his toughest challenge yet, the parents. Now, imagine some random 20-year-old guy from the neighborhood knocking on your door, talking about making your kid famous. Sounds sketchy, right? Well, ABC's parents thought so too. Wales could tell they weren't buying it. Their faces said it all. Why should we trust you? What do you really want with our kids? And honestly, who could blame them? The neighborhood they lived in wasn't exactly the safest. Guys Wales' age were either caught up in the streets or looking for quick hustles. To them, he could have been just another guy with a get-rich-quick scheme. But Wales wasn't backing down. He knew their fears were valid because the industry was a dangerous place, especially for young black kids. He knew they were worried about their boys losing out on a normal childhood, being taken advantage of, or worse, ending up another tragic story. So after plenty of convincing, reassuring, and proving he wasn't about to ruin their lives, he finally got the green light.
They don't give ABC enough credit for what they did for Atlanta. As I
look at your hat. My thing was to put kids on BET. There was no kids on TV.
And just in time, too, because ABC had a golden ticket waiting for them. Sometimes all you need is the right person in your corner. And for ABC, that person was none other than Ralph Tresvant. Yes, that Ralph Tresvant from New Edition. Turns out Dave Lil Dave Shelton wasn't just a talented kid. He was Ralph Tresvant's nephew. And at the time, Ralph had just launched his solo career under MCA Records. Now, let's be real. Having a famous uncle doesn't guarantee success. Plenty of celebrity relatives out here struggling. But in this case, it worked because through Ralph, ABC landed the connection that would change everything. Wales now had a clear path to a record deal, and ABC was about to go from local talent show champs to actual stars. You know someone believes in you when they're willing to put their entire livelihood on the line. That's exactly what Kevin Wales did for ABC. The moment Ralph Tresvant gave him the green light and invited the boys out to LA, Wales didn't hesitate. He quit his steady job at the airline, emptied out his savings, and booked that flight. No backup plan, no safety net, just pure blind faith that these 6 kids would make it big. Either this was the smartest move of his life or a setup for the world's saddest I lost it all story. Spoiler alert, it was the best decision he ever made. Once in LA, the boys recorded a demo tape in Ralph's home studio, and that tape ended up in the hands of the Michael Bivins. Now, Bivins was no stranger to spotting talent. He had already turned New Edition's breakup into his own success with Belle Biv DeVoe, and he had a good ear for what was next. The moment he heard ABC's demo, he knew he had something special. So what did he do? He personally introduced the boys to Mtown Records president Gerald Busby. That's right, Motown, the same label that gave us the Jackson 5, the same Motown that turned young, talented kids into superstars. Busby didn't need much convincing. ABC had the energy, the look, and most importantly, the sound that could bring a fresh wave of young fans into R&B. Just like that, the deal was sealed, and ABC was officially part of music history. The ink wasn't even dry on their contract before Motown rushed them into the studio. They had something special, something fresh, and when their debut single Isha dropped, it was game over. Middle school girls everywhere lost their minds. Every girl named Isha, and trust me, there were plenty, thought these kids were serenading them, and the song's hook was so catchy, it practically glued itself to your brain. Also, the music video, pure 90s gold. 6 kids in oversized coats and hats, looking like a squad of thugged-out Paddington Bears. Seriously, why did we let kids dress like that? Then came Playground, another smash that, let's be honest, had some of the most questionable rap lyrics ever. But hey, they were kids. Still, it was infectious, and both songs dominated radio stations and MTV's R&B rotations. By the time their album Coolin' at the Playground You Know hit shelves on February 11th, 1991, it was already on its way to platinum status. Not bad for a group of kids who started off dancing for spare change. Soon enough, these 6 kids weren't just playing in the schoolyard. They were on tour, rocking stages, and living a life most grown-ups could only dream of. Regular school? Please. They had private tutors because fame had them too busy to sit in a classroom. While their friends were learning about countries, they were visiting the countries. In fact, if you tuned into In Living Color on March 3rd, 1991, you'd have seen ABC performing Aisha, with Keenan Ivory Wayans introducing them as the next Jackson 5, New Edition, and The Boys. By the end of 1991, ABC was still everywhere.
Another bad creation.
No, you gotta look up and tell them.
Okay, another bad creation.
Another bad creation.
We're talking magazine covers, TV appearances, radio interviews, the whole 9 yards. If you had a pulse and a radio, you knew who these kids were. Their album wasn't just riding on the strength of Aisha and Playground either. Songs like My World and Spider-Man got decent airplay, but if we're being honest, the real hidden gem was their cover of New Edition's Jealous Girl. Now, by today's standards, this song is corny beyond belief, But you have to admit, it's hilarious to hear little boys crooning about heartbreak decades before Taylor Swift built an entire career out of doing the exact same thing. Their undeniable buzz forced radio stations to pay attention. R&B programmers, who usually rolled their eyes at kid acts, had to admit that something was happening here. And once MTV hopped on the bandwagon, the pop market opened up like the gates of heaven. Translation? Once mainstream radio realized that even adults were bumping ABC's songs, they knew they had no choice but to put them on rotation. Of course, not everyone was impressed. Critics had a lot to say about ABC's actual singing ability. To put it nicely, it wasn't exactly Grammy-winning material, but the young fans, they didn't care. For the little girls who were obsessed with ABC, it wasn't about vocal talent. It was about the vibe, the style, the attitude. These kids weren't just performers, they were crush material. And that's exactly how Kevin Wales saw it too. He understood that for girls aged 7, 8, and 9, ABC was everything. Looking back, it's wild to think about. A group of literal children being pushed as sex symbols. That's the kind of thing that would never fly today. But in the early 1990s, nobody batted an eye. Now let's talk about one of the funniest and most unnecessary rap beefs of all time. Because yes, even preteen rappers had smoke back in the day. ABC somehow got into a ridiculous feud with Criss Cross, the only other group of miniature rappers wearing their clothes 2 sizes too big. And Criss Cross fired the first shot. At the beginning of their still legendary hit, Jump, Mac Daddy threw in a little jab. In case you didn't get that, they said, "Don't try to compare us to another bad little fad." Now, was that aimed at ABC? Absolutely. Did it turn into an all-out battle? Nope. Nothing happened. Just some baby-sized tension in oversized jeans. But as we all know, what goes up in the music industry always comes crashing back down. At the height of their fame, ABC even made their only movie appearance in The Meteor Man, a 1993 superhero comedy packed with cameos from other musicians. And because it was the 90s and fashion choices were wild, they decided to dye their hair blonde for the role. Yup, the same look they flexed in the music video for the East Coast Family's one and only collective track, 1 to 4 All for One. But by 1993, the magic started wearing off. Their second album, It Ain't What You Wear, It's How You Play It, which, what does that even mean, dropped, but things weren't the same. Overexposure hit them hard. The new singles, I Don't Wanna Be Grown Up and Where's Your Little Sister, flopped. The excitement just wasn't there anymore. And let's not ignore the styling choices. For some bizarre reason, Michael Bivins had them dressing like Native American strippers. Why? No one knows. But we do know that the album tanked, and before they could course correct, it was too late. ABC's downfall wasn't just about bad outfits and weaker songs. Motown was changing, management wasn't in sync, and the label didn't know what to do with them. The boys had zero control over their music or direction. They were kids, and with no real say in their career, they got lost in the industry shuffle. By the mid-90s, ABC had quietly faded into the background, and the saddest part was they had no money to show for it. Now, we do not know whose fault that was, but when asked if there was anything he would have done differently, here's what Roe had to say. Yep, it happened. Believe it or not, ABC did attempt a reunion in 2006. They put out the Grady Baby compilation EP, featuring tracks from the original members. But if you blinked, you probably missed it. The project came and went without much buzz. That said, credit where it's due. The guys actually stepped up their singing and performing. They were older, more polished, and had clearly grown as artists. But unfortunately, the industry had moved on. So, what's ABC up to now? In 2006, the group launched their own business venture, Another Bad Creation Live. They've dabbled in mentoring, entertainment, and even filmmaking, using their story to educate and inspire. And of course, they're living their lives, working, raising families, and occasionally performing together. Lil Dave is now 44 years old, Roro 48, Chris 48, Red 49, Mark 44, and GA 48 years old. The net worths remains unpublished. ABC may not be running the charts anymore, but they'll always have a place in pop culture history because whether you loved them, hated them, or just laughed at their over-the-top fashion choices, you remember them.